authentic conversations about ourselves and our community, exploring topics that uplift and inspire us, from personal growth to social change. So grab your teacup and get ready to join the conversation.
Lengthy. There's over 80. And in fact, while we were waiting on deliberations, there was another lawsuit that came in. So I don't think this affects that. And a lot of people sometimes ask, why do people, file civil suits as opposed to something with the government? And this is why sometimes, according to the law, people don't get justice that they are looking for when it comes to some of these government cases. So then they resort to civil cases as a way to get some kind of payback for what they feel like has happened to them. So I don't think it's going to affect the civil cases.
Yeah, I think that's a different animal. They'll be attacked in a different way. But look, I mean, if you look at OJ, right? There was a criminal case, there was a civil case, different results. But also he's facing allegations in the civil context that have nothing to do with the criminal case. And that's something that's completely different. I want to bring back in Elizabeth on this because, Elizabeth, I know we have to sign you off in a minute. We got this super chat question from Shiri B. Thank you so much for this. Love Long Crime. Thank you so much. Jesse and Queen Elizabeth. Did the defense ever bring up a conspiracy theory of the timing of the allegations due to Diddy's lawsuit against Diageo? There was nothing about that in the criminal case, right?
I mean, surprisingly, Jesse, it was brought up just a little bit in relation to one particular witness, and that being Derek Ferguson, this chief financial officer over at Bad Boy, when they kind of mentioned during his cross-examination whether or not Diageo might have played a role in kind of, they were talking about the expansion of Ciroc and how they were only isolated to certain urban areas, and that Derek Ferguson was kind of talking about how the Combs enterprise, not to be confused with the one that the government was alleging, but the Combs enterprise wanted more of an expansion outside of just to be marketed at urban areas. So surprisingly, it was brought up in that particular context. And in that, when I remember reading, or not reading, because obviously I was there, I remember hearing it. And I was like, oh, might be in relation to the Diageo and kind of the civil matter with that. And so it was brought up in court, yes, but as far as just the overall conversation about it, it was really just kind of limited to that.
Yeah, and not the timing of it. There was some insidious reason. Before we let you go, I know I have to wrap up. There's a lot of commotion going on outside, right? What's happening around
here? Yeah, there is. Yeah, honestly, Jesse, if you guys saw me kind of looking around, looking back and forth, it's because literally right behind our tent, somebody was yelling, getting into a very heated debate about, again, the emotions are running pretty high after this verdict came out. A lot of people, especially those who were very much free Diddy, free Sean Combs, those who are kind of in his support system, kind of yelling a little bit at us. I even see some of the comments from you guys, because some of y'all are saying that we're biased, all of those things. And so in terms of just the emotions running kind of high after this verdict is read, it's definitely spilling out over into the courtroom. The yelling kind of stopped for a moment. Not sure if it went kind of over to the other side, but it seems like there is still a lot kind of going on. I'm glad that it kind of calmed down a little bit before you went back to me, but it was kind of a little bit of a commotion going on. I was just kind of nervous for a moment that he might interrupt our live shot, but it doesn't seem like that's happening.
Right.
It seems like, for the most part, I was taken over to the side a little bit over there.
Well, you stay safe. We will talk to you a little bit later, and we'll find out what today is going to have in store for us and whether or not we might actually see Sean Combs exit that courthouse. That would be something. We, the public, have not been able to lay eyes on it for quite some time. Elizabeth Milner, thanks so much. Really appreciate it. Want to bring on Tyler Bailey into the conversation. Tyler, thanks so much for coming on. It's good to see you. I'm made of questions, but we also have a ton of questions coming on. We have a lot of questions about this. So JAM has a super chat question. Thank you so much. Must Diddy register as a sex offender? And Martina McGowan, again, has a super chat question. Thank you so much. Is he classified now as a sex offender? So is he classified as a sex offender right now after being convicted? And will he have to be under federal law?
Yeah, that depends on the statute. I don't believe with these charges that he's going to have to register as a sex offender. He'll probably have some terms of any supervised release that he gets that may require, sex addiction counseling or things of that nature. But I don't see with the charges that Mr. Goins has been accused of and the remaining ones that are left of him having to register as a sex offender. This isn't a case involving minors. I'll need to check the statute, but I don't believe that's going to be a part of his penalty.
Tyler, got a super chat question from Robin Donnellan. Robin, thank you so much. Will Diddy get back all the tapes and other items that the feds took in the raid? It's an interesting question because I wonder if he could put in a request for whatever was taken for property that was seized, but at the same time, he was convicted. And the argument could be that evidence was used to convict him. I mean, what are the chances he could get any of that material actually back?
It's unlikely that he would get that material back. And also unlikely that he would even ask for the material back. And still, he was convicted of 2 charges. He may appeal those 2 convictions that he has left here. So it's still relevant for purpose of the appeal on the record. So I don't see him trying to get it back. And also sometimes, when you win, you get a win, you don't need to overplay your hand like the government did in this case.
We have a super chat question from LC. Thank you so much. I'll throw this to you, Mina. Elizabeth's a star. Did this boil down to closings? She threw paint on a wall and left it for the jury to paint the picture on their own. I'm assuming they're talking about the prosecution. Could have said charge, crime after crime, line by line. Jurors are not painters. Thoughts? Did the prosecution, I guess the question, were they too broad? Did they just give too much for the jury to consider? Was it, a little too, too much when you look at all the underlying predicate crimes of kidnapping, arson, forced labor, sex trafficking, transportation to engage in prostitution? I know they were trying to set up a criminal enterprise, but was it too much, Mina?
Well, I think there's a lot of nuances in the law. I mean, even me just being on air, having to explain to my audience, what are predicate acts and what do they need in order to get the guilty on the RICO. I think it was very law heavy and it might have been confusing for the jury. I also think the defense did an awesome job of discrediting some of the witnesses. They presented extensive text messages that were loving from Jane Doe and Cassie and even Mia, after she claims that she was raped and all these horrible things happened to her. Mia continued to praise him on social media. And as and in the case of Cassie and Jane Doe, they continued those relationships despite them testifying that they had been victimized in some way. So I think the defense did an awesome job of disproving and discrediting some of the witnesses here. And I think that's what we're seeing. All you need is a little modicum of reasonable doubt. And clearly that was there because we see how the jury decided this case.
Look, I came on air yesterday and I gave my prediction. I said, based on the juror notes, it seemed to me you couldn't have jurors who were voting in favor of racketeering. There was a split there. and them not have already convicted him of something else. There's no way they could say we're thinking about convicting him of racketeering and he's completely acquitted across the board on everything else. The easiest, I've said this from the beginning, the easiest convictions for the prosecution were transportation to engage in prostitution based on the phone records, text messages, travel receipts, testimony. It was there. It was there. What was more up in the air was sex trafficking. And I thought because the jurors did not even ask for a readback of testimony with respect to Jane, and because of already some of the grayer parts of her testimony, it was likely that they were going to find him not guilty with respect to sex trafficking of Jane. Where the one that was a toss-up was sex trafficking of Cassie. I thought because of the readouts of the testimony yesterday of the key alleged moments of alleged sex trafficking, right, when they talk about 2016, the attack, when they talk about the plane incident, when they talk about Daniel Phillips' testimony, I thought that was the jury reading that back, coming back with a verdict shortly thereafter that they might convict him on sex trafficking. They did not. Maybe there was a debate about, let's just look at this one final time, and they were not convinced. Racketeering was up in the air always, and did become a question even after a modified Allen charge from the judge. Would they come back and say, we still can't come to a decision? Would they say, nope, actually we find him guilty? Here they found him not guilty. I want to bring in Sierra Gillespie, law and crimes reporter who's been on the ground, who's been doing excellent coverage, the host of Scandal. Hope everybody can check it out on YouTube as well. It's a great show. Couple of things that we have coming in here, super chat questions. So first of all, Maria Jimenez says, no question, this person is just showing support. Thank you so much, Maria. That's so kind of you. But this is an important question we have coming in, and I want you to answer it, Sierra. Pizza asks, this is, and thank you for the super chat question, Pizza. This is a spit in the faces of victims everywhere. This is why victims don't come forward. What's your reaction to that?
I think it's an emotional reaction for a lot of people, right? And we've talked about this throughout the case, the fact that this witness testimony was so intimate, so personal, going through some of their own trauma that they had to do, number one, in front of a crowd, number two, in front of their alleged abuser, is hard, right? Okay, so we have that really intense stuff they're talking about. And yet, unfortunately, most of us know someone who's been affected by sexual abuse in some way, separating it from the case altogether, you know? And so I think that's really why this case has struck a chord with so many people. If we're setting aside P. Diddy and his celebrity status, which is interesting, yes, but if we focus on the sex trafficking allegations, almost everyone unfortunately knows someone who was the victim of sexual assault, if not themselves. And so, of course, it's going to be emotional to have a result like this, not guilty in regards to Jane and Cassie and the sex trafficking. Honestly, I heard what you were saying, Jesse, before you called me up, and I tend to agree with you. I thought, Jane, I could see that being not guilty, but with Cassie, that's not at all what I was expecting. And I don't know if I can say exactly what our viewer said about this being a spit-in-the-face situation, but I do think, I mean, maybe it's true. If we're believing what the government had to say in some of their statements, they were saying this could deter other victims in other cases unrelated to P. Diddy from coming forward. This is very important. A lot of cases rely or hinder on the testimony from these witnesses or alleged survivors and abusers because sometimes it takes a while to come forward. Sometimes there's no longer that DNA or it happened way back when if we're talking a civil suit. So I do think it's a statement at the very least.
Sarah, what is going on around you? I understand people are quite tense. Who's around you? What are they saying? What is happening right now after the verdict?
It is tense here, Jesse. It very much so is. I mean, just seconds ago before I came on air, there were people live streaming, literally screaming at each other. So much so that I was like, okay, am I safe here? Which is what we're all evaluating all the time, making sure that we're okay and safe. Because people are legitimately screaming, yelling at each other about differing opinions. Some people are so pro-Diddy. How could you have in the past said something so bad about P. Diddy? You reported that. How could you? Other people who are literally smoking cigars and saying this is a victory because he'll at least spend some time behind bars, according to these people. And behind me, I don't know if you can see it as much now, there were so many people here, I'm going to guess around 200, it could have been growing, that the crowd was kind of falling into the streets. I went across the street and kind of wanted to see what the vibe was over there. Again, very tense. And New York police officers were there saying, get back, because this is an active street, by the way. You've seen the sirens and heard the horns. Like, people are driving up and down this road, and it's unsafe to be walking in the middle of the street. So just probably 5 minutes ago, an NYPD giant van with barricades came, and they were going and putting them farther across the courthouse there so that people can't spill out over into the road for their safety, and also, honestly, possibly because the crowd has gotten so wily and so rowdy, and we just don't know what's going to happen. So there is a pretty decent sized police presence here too.
We have reporting from NBC to couple this that say men outside the courtroom screaming over their opposing views on Combs' verdict, as Sierra was saying. Apparently there is one man who's been reported to be wearing a denim jacket, sunglasses, questioning another man in a red shirt and a bucket hat over whether Combs is going to prison. The man in the denim had yelled, he beat her. The other man said it doesn't matter. The other man says he beat her, he kicked her. The other one says, and she liked it. How about that? This is a verdict, Sierra, because essentially, let's be entirely clear. The jury was not convinced that Cassie or Jane were victims of sex trafficking, that they were not, that Sean Combs did not use force, fraud, or coercion to induce them into commercial sex acts. They believe that they were transported across state lines for the purposes of prostitution. That is a very different legal conclusion than sex trafficking. And you wonder, you respect the jury's verdict, you understand the jury's verdict. I have no reason to question the jury's verdict. This seemed to be a very methodical jury, took their position, their role very seriously, but you can see how people are now going to interpret this in different ways.
Oh, yeah, and that description that you just made, the man who was wearing the red bucket hat and then the denim jacket, that was literally right behind me. Where the camera is, right behind the camera is where that was happening. And it was tense, and you do see this, Jesse. I mean, it's opposing views. Some people who say that they are advocates, people who are sexual assault survivors, who are saying one thing, and other people who are saying they are advocates for P. Diddy. He's wrongly accused, saying another thing. So there's a lot happening.
Yeah. Tyler, I want to go to you real quick. We got a super chat question that came in. Keon Roper, I'm so sorry. Pronunciation's not my strong suit. But thank you for the super chat question. Could Diddy have a civil suit? Could he sue the government? Misconduct for Breonna Bogolin's perjured testimony, overcharging with RICO, because RICO seems like a clear overcharge. Can he sue the government now?
He could sue the government. He would likely be unsuccessful in suing the government. I think the government had probable cause for the charges that they accused Mr. Combs of committing, but they were not able to prove some of those charges beyond a reasonable doubt. Generally, there could be, malicious prosecution or a false arrest or false imprisonment case when somebody is arrested without probable cause. But here, based off the evidence that we've seen over 7 weeks of trial, there was clearly enough probable cause for the arrest. But the jury felt differently, that he was not guilty of mainly the RICO charge and along with the sex trafficking charges.
Okay, so here at almost noon, we are getting a report that Sean Combs' family is entering that courthouse once again. This day is not over. We are going to see whether or not Sean Combs will be released. Will we see him on the outside? Will he walk out of that federal courthouse? It's going to be up to the judge. Both sides are petitioning one way or another. The prosecution wants him locked up. The defense wants him freed. There is an advantage in the defense's camp right now after him being acquitted of racketeering and conspiracy and sex trafficking. We're going to take a break. We will continue with more live coverage here on Law and Crime.
All right, as you guys see, everybody's gathering around outside in support or non-support of Diddy getting bail. People are wanting to see him stay, and people are wanting to see him get granted bail. Camera crews and everything, news reporters, everybody vlogging. Okay, everybody cameras up everywhere, phones, tripods. What did the sippers thing. We've been sipping this morning. The tea has dropped on Diddy. Diddy is acquitted and convicted at the same damn time, y'all. He got acquitted on 3 of the charges, most serious ones, and then he got convicted on the transpo of a hoe. Okay, he got convicted of transpo of a hoe twice. Okay, so those are mandatory sentencings, could go up to 10 years apiece. He's got 2, which could be 20, but we also read the things that could come into play for Diddy, being that Diddy's a non-offender, things like that, no prior criminal record, blah blah blah. Okay, what that could look like for Diddy. Diddy could get bail. Diddy could get 2 years on each, up to 2 years on each charge, meaning he would already have served almost a year, do a year, be out. Okay, so yeah, what say sippers? Drop it down in the chat. What do you think? He will get bail or not? Do you think Diddy will return to court if he gets bail for his sentencing? Okay, Law and Crime are on a break. Oh, they came back up here for a few. Let's tap in and listen.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jesse Weber, and welcome back to our continued live coverage of the Sean Diddy Combs trial. Big day here today in the Southern District of New York, in the federal courthouse, out in downtown New York. A verdict has been reached. We've been reporting about it all morning. A verdict has been reached in the case. Sean Combs acquitted of racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion for both Cassie Ventura Fine and Jane, but ultimately he has been convicted of transportation to engage in prostitution, the Mann Act violations. And today is, you would think that would be the end of the day. It is certainly not. Why? The judge has to determine whether or not Sean Combs should make bail, whether or not he should be released, whether or not, and we have a live shot of the courthouse, whether or not we will see him walk out of that courthouse later today. Right now, both sides are submitting paperwork to the court. We're keeping a very careful eye on the courtroom updates to see what that decision will be, because the judge is going to decide. And what the basis was for Sean Combs to be locked up during the whole course of this criminal process, it is very different now. It is very different now because he's not facing those top charges, those violent charges, those charges that could have sent him to prison for the rest of his life. And one of the other big considerations we have when we talk about transportation to engage in prostitution, the charges that he was convicted of, is what will be his sentence. While there are maximums of 10 years in prison on each charge, and although the prosecution has said that he could face up to 20 years if they stack them one after the other, it seems highly unlikely given a number of mitigating factors in this case, but there's also aggravating factors, and we'll talk a little bit more about it. But we're going to take your questions as we are live on air, and we update you about what is happening. But I also have with us a very special series of guests. So we have an all-star panel. We got with us Ben Shue, acclaimed litigator, famously represented Johnny Depp in his high-profile trial against Amber Heard. We also have with us criminal defense attorney and civil rights attorney Tyler Bailey. We have with us Sierra Gillespie and Elizabeth Milner out in the field. We'll get to them. But right now we are also joined by Sheree Hayes. Now, for anybody who's been following this case, you will know who Mr. Hayes is, also referred to as the Punisher during the course of this case. Mr. Hayes, who's also, by the way, the author of In Search of Freezer Meat, we can talk more about that. Hayes had testified during the course of this trial about his involvement in 8 to 12 sexual encounters that he had with Cassie Ventura Fine and Sean Combs. Testified that Combs watched and gave directions during these events. You played a pivotal role in this case, Mr. Hayes. It's great to see you. Thanks for taking the time. Your reaction to the verdict?
I honestly thought the verdict was the correct decision. It maybe not based on following the specifics of the law, because I know the prosecutor said you only had to find one instance where you believe there's coercion. But if you're talking about a jury and the understanding that this was relationships, these were his partners, these were, they were exchanged text messages of love and care. And over long periods of time, and then also a bunch of consenting also messages to the sexual activity and the type of lifestyle they lived. I thought it was going to be hard for a typical person that wasn't going to really streamline the law, extremely hypervigilant, to not see this as a relationship domestic issue opposed to sex trafficking. So this is actually what I expected.
To be clear, in any of your encounters, did you see any force, fraud, coercion being used to induce Cassie to engage in these sex acts?
Yeah, it's similar to my testimony. I did not, and so what I will even add is, I testified, and the facts were I only interacted and spoke to Cassie during any of these occasions. I never had any communication with Mr. Combs. So I would be greeted in a personable one-on-one situation prior to the activities, and then again at the conclusion. And I always found good vibes, good energies. Hey, thanks for coming. It was great. We'll see you again. Here you go. And I did not even witness anything that appeared to be under the influence of alcohol or drugs or anything. So I did find it difficult to see my interaction being anything close to criminal.
I want to tell you what's happening outside the courthouse. CNN is reporting that people are quite excited. There are people who are gathered. They are spraying baby oil into the crowd. There are remnants of oil that could be seen on the courthouse pavement. We were reporting earlier on today that there was a verbal dispute between supporters of Sean Combs, or at least supporters of his case, and those who feel differently. When you're seeing a reaction like that outside of the courthouse, you playing a role in this case, what's your position on it? What is your view on it?
So what I think is there's a benefit of the misinformation. You know, me as a civilian, even before I was involved, before I became a witness, the social understanding of this case, they made it so much bigger than what it was. You had rumors of child trafficking. You had all of this bribery and celebrities involved, and all of this crazy stuff that escalated to this belief that you was going to get this magnitude of just terrible acts, and not downplaying the domestic violence part of it. But I think when the actual facts of the case became evident, I think people's expectation and their belief that it was going to be so much more, it actually minimized the victims' experiences. So now where there are still people that are victimized, regardless of the verdict, there's still bad experiences. People almost see it as a celebratory, simple scenario, because everybody thought it was going to be so much worse than what it was, including myself.
Do you think,
listening to the banter?
Do you think that your testimony helped secure the conviction for transportation to engage in prostitution? Because let's be clear, the two charges that he was convicted of, one was with respect to Cassie, and the other was with respect to Jane. Do you think your testimony helped secure the conviction against Sean Combs?
No, not at all. Not my testimony, because I was clear that my dealings with them was, I'm from New York City at the time, and I only dealt with them in a New York City area. And me being hired in the initial communications was as a male dancer. We always show up on our own. But I did hear in the testimony there was evidence of plane tickets and stuff being purchased on his American Express card for some of the other escorts. So I'm assuming that secured the conviction for those charges.
Mm-hmm. So as I mentioned to you before we were coming on, we have amazing viewers who submit incredible questions. And I have a bunch of them. A lot of people have questions for you, Mr. Hayes. So let's get right into it. All right, first question. We got a question from Jackie Reed. Did you have any direct dealings with Christina Coram or any other person other than Diddy that helped set up his freak-offs?
Actually, no. And actually, I didn't have any direct dealings with Diddy. All of my communications were specifically with Miss Ventura and Miss Ventura only. There was no conversation, no communication, no anything with Mr. Combs. And I said this before, the first time I actually even had eye contact him, for the first time, eye contact was leaving the stand after my testimony. I had zero interactions with Mr. Combs.
And by the way, I'm just going to let you know, I'm not like tweaking these questions. These are the ones that are coming in, so I'm just going to read them to you. This is from an accused. This is from an account, Smarty Pants. Thank you so much for the super chat question. Do you think Diddy was cheap with you?
Well, listen, if I'm being honest, when I hear some of the other guys getting $5,000, $6,000, obviously that would be the first thing you think. But then I don't know the scenario. I was never there more than 4 hours at a time on the average. And one thing that I will say is I came multiple days in a row. So I don't know what the criteria was to determine what my fee would be, but I was fine with it. I don't have any reservations as if I was not fairly compensated,
We've got a question. Where is this? Okay. Show and Tell Knitting asks, how will the results of this trial affect your interactions with clients like Diddy? Will you do anything differently in the future?
As far as I'm concerned, I would not do anything differently. That was a nuanced situation for me. Obviously, I'm a male dancer. My trade on a regular basis is not sex work to that degree. That was a proposition I indulged in. So I don't really see much changing. This was a very nuanced situation. I don't think anybody predicted these scenarios escalating to what it actually became.
So this is one of the ex-workers that testified against Diddy, everybody, okay? He is one of the guys that helped get Diddy convicted on the transportation of a hoe. Okay, this is one of the guys, I think they called him the Punisher, that testified on the stand about Diddy, saying that, yes, he was engaged in transportation of himself with Diddy and Cassie and his involvement in his role. So let's listen to the Punisher now speak on Law and Crime on his involvement and how he feels about the conviction and acquittal of Diddy. Thanks for sipping tea with Tanisha Talks Teas. Y'all keep on sipping. Drop those teacups in the chat. Let me know what y'all think about Diddy's ass, okay? Convicted and acquitted at the same damn time.
I don't have any full regrets of my interactions, or if I'm being honest, even my decision. It was something I was a part of. It were some of our decisions, and I'm comfortable with the way everything transpired, even the negatives.
Chris Bono asks, how has this experience changed you, if at all?
Well, it put me in a scenario where I have to do damage control, right? We live in a society where you meet a person, everybody Googles you, right? So I know for the rest of my life, I'm associated with this crime and or trial, I should say, with this trial and these accusations, and I'm instrumental in it too. So all I'm doing now.
One also has to wonder, tea sippers, do you think the Punisher should be afraid for his life? Do you think now that Diddy will be acquitted on most charges and likely to receive a less of a charge, of a sentencing, do you think the Punisher should be afraid for his life? Drop that down in
now. I have to have a much conscious effort in how I am perceived in my interactions with people going forward, because I could start out in a lot of situations in a negative opposed to what normal people do.
And I appreciate you coming on and speaking to media outlets about this, because obviously the trial wasn't testified. There was reporting, it wasn't televised, excuse me, but it wasn't, there was reporting about what the testimony was like. People might have misconceptions about what you said, why you testified. So to be able to clear the air is really important, which is why we get a question from Brooklyn Truth. What was your motivation for testifying? So to be clear, I mean, did you want to testify? Did you reach out to the government? How did that work exactly?
So I did not want to testify. The government contacted me even way before the charges, just investigators. And I actually believed that my testimony was going to be insignificant. I explained to them I didn't see any violence. I didn't see anything that was out of the ordinary. And then I was aware, I was a resident of New York. We met up in New York. So it didn't really, in my opinion, or my understanding, constitute sex trafficking. So The thing
I mean, we're not even going to hold you guys here, sippers. He has done lots of interviews all across the board about this after he testified. Nobody really knew beforehand, aside for Cassie and Diddy, who the Punisher was in that sense of him being connected to Diddy and Cassie, right? He alluded to Cassie and Diddy in a book. However, he did not mention them in the book. He speaks of that in interviews. So, I mean, he's, gained some clout off of testifying against Diddy, even though he's saying that the government essentially made him do it, okay?
put me in this situation, and this never happened. I didn't get any issues from the prosecution or the federal government. But if you talk to people who's supposed to be in the know, they scare you about the Southern District. They give you this thing where, look, you want to cooperate, just do whatever you got to do. You don't want to get on their bad side. So I went into the scenario like, look, I'm just going to cooperate to the best of my ability because I don't want to create a scenario where I'm looked at as an issue and then it escalates to something. It probably wouldn't have, but I just kept getting negative feedback that the Southern District is people you don't want to mess around with. And if they want to talk to you, if they want facts, if they want information, you have to give it to them. And that escalated to me on the stand where I never second guessed even, cooperating because I did have worry. Resistance could have been an issue for me.
Got maybe the most important question of the day from Xenu Golf Club. Did you like your courtroom sketches?
So I'm still getting problems from my buddies about how terrible those sketches are. So I did not like the courtroom sketches, man.
Well, Combs didn't like them either. He thought he looked like a koala. So.
Yeah. They have me. They're calling me like I don't know if you're familiar with the Fantastic Four, but I'm Ben Grimm.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So yeah, a lot of jokes, a lot of unnecessary jokes I'm subjected to because of those photos.
Got a question coming in from, wait, I just lost it. Where was it? Wait. I think no. Oh, yeah. Chris Buono asks, if you weren't an escort worker, in what line of business could you see yourself?
Ironically, I have a passion for car sales. I could see myself being in a decent dealership, maybe a Mercedes, BMW dealership. I like the interaction with people. That would have been somewhere I would have went into as a secondary option.
Let me ask you a question. When you were testifying, this is my question. When you were testifying, what was it like to be in the room with Sean Combs, to see him? Did you make eye contact with him? Was he looking at you? Did it feel awkward? Was it strange?
Listen, man, it was the actual extreme of all of those feelings. I think the federal court is set up to intimidate you. The magnitude of the room, it's like the doors are 15 feet high, the ceiling's 30 feet high. The furniture's huge. You're sitting up high. The judge is high. It's freezing in the room. I walked in and I had literally an anxiety attack. And I consider myself a very calm, cool, collected guy, not easily rattled at all. And by the time I got on the witness stand, I was trembling. And so then to put on top of the understanding that I'm walking in there as the prosecution's witness, so I'm going to assume there's not a favorable thought process with Mr. Combs, his family, anybody involved. So it was very nerve-wracking, man. And I only benefited because I got called to the stand 10 minutes before lunch. And literally just swearing in and answering my name and very preliminary questions, I was losing my voice. I was having trouble talking. And so I'm happy that it broke for lunch. And it took me 20 or the 30-minute lunch to recompose myself. Or I might have had a very different testimony if I didn't have that break time to just kind of get myself together because it was overwhelming.
Let me, Shrey, stand by. We have more questions coming in, but I want to bring on the other panelists as well. Ben, we haven't had a chance to talk about the verdict. This is something you predicted, though.
Well, I don't know. I went back and forth, but it was, I have to confess, it was a bit of a surprise to me.
Was it something about Cassie's testimony? Was it something about Jane's testimony with respect to sex trafficking? Again, the jury did not believe the prosecution proved beyond a reasonable doubt that they were victims of sex trafficking. What was it? What was the thing that you might have been a hang-up?
I thought it was some of the communications, the text messages, which really suggested more of a relationship rather than coercion. That this is, I think it came across as a very, very complicated, unusual relationship, but a relationship.
Yeah. We got super chat questions coming in for you, Ben. So this is from Nancy Nicole. Actually, this is a regular question. Then we'll go to, actually, let me start with a super chat question. Super chat question from JAM. Thank you so much. Ben, can law address the need for cognitive consent that has often comprised sex crimes when, I'm not sure what this means, when something's normalized? But yeah, can the law address the need for cognitive consent that is often compromised in sex crimes? I'm not exactly sure the question, but I throw it to you.
Very good question. And I don't think really this is something that the law can really define. And that's why I think the jury system is really the best way of obtaining the truth when you're talking about complex human emotions. It's really hard to have bright lines in the law. I think it's something that a jury has to consider. And I think this really is the best way to adjudicate these things.
Tyler, Nikki Vale says, do you think if Christina Coram, this is a super chat question, thank you so much. Do you think if Christina Coram testified, the jury would have reached a different verdict?
I think that if she testified as a part of conspiracy, it may have helped the jury get to a conclusion more likely to convict on count number one. But I think as a whole that this jury probably wrestled with the fact that they did not believe this was a conspiracy, a one-man conspiracy with Mr. Combs at the top, and there being no co-conspirators, and then all of the acts of furtherance of this conspiracy led to prostitution, sex trafficking with the two victims. I think they really wrestled and not feel like it was enough. But with KK testifying, possibly it could have helped the prosecution out a little more in convincing the jury.
Ben, got a super chat question from Christina Lester. She writes, I have to know this. Please ask Ben. Is he related to Benjamin Chew, prominent Pennsylvania lawyer and jurist and a close friend of George Washington, 1722 to 1810? The people must know.
You have a wonderful viewership and someone who is very keen on history. Yes, that is my ancestor, who was the last crown-appointed chief judge of Pennsylvania. And anybody who is a history buff like your viewer can go see the museum that's in Germantown called Cliveden. And that was Benjamin Chew's house, and it was the site of the Battle of Germantown.
That is awesome. That is amazing. And you had no choice but to become a lawyer. You couldn't be in sales like Mr. Hayes. You couldn't do it. Nope, you couldn't be in that. Nope, you had to be a lawyer. I completely understand. Okay, let me go. Let me go to you, Tyler, on this. Make it make sense. Make it make sense. Super chat question. Is it curious how a deadlocked jury yesterday could come to a unanimous decision with only the hour the next day? I mean, that is interesting, right? They were deadlocked at the end of the day. They basically said they couldn't, they're unpersuadable, right? Unpersuadable views on both sides. They come back in an hour and find him not guilty of racketeering. Can you explain that?
It's amazing what a good night's sleep could do. They clearly not reached that verdict yesterday. They went home. They were told not to discuss this matter, but they slept on it, and they probably were fresh-eyed and ready to go that morning. And I'm pretty sure the foreman said, okay, y'all, we slept on it. Where are we at? And they quickly got to a verdict today. And that's exactly what I think happened.
We have Sierra Gillespie with us, too, out in the field. Sierra, good to see you. First, let us know how crazy it is out there in terms of have you seen more baby oil being sprayed? That's part one. Part two, we have a super chat question from Free. Free, thank you so much. I just don't understand why sex trafficking of Cassie even needed to be proven when we had video evidence of her being beaten and dragged back into the room. That seems like a flaw in our system. So first, What's the scene like? And really the basis of this question is, wasn't sex trafficking of Cassie proven by the 2016 tape?
Wow, these are both really good questions. I'll start with the former first. Is there baby oil present? Confirmed. Yes, there is. Across the street from me at the courthouse, there was in fact baby oil being sprayed over there. And let me tell you, there are literally hundreds of people here. So much so that the NYPD has come and barricaded me into this area I'm in right now across the street with my camera. I got my lights and I'm stuck here basically. Then across the street at the courthouse, Elizabeth Milner is seemingly stuck inside because they have barricaded everyone kind of over there because honestly, it was getting dangerous. A lot of people were getting rowdy. People were spilling over into the street. And this is still a road where people are driving. So it's dangerous for people to be standing in the street, right? So, I mean, it is pretty intense here. There's been cheering. There's kind of been a sense that maybe, just maybe, something wild could happen in this bail hearing. And P. Diddy himself could stroll out of this courthouse behind me at any moment. We'll see what's going to happen there. So TBD, and of course, we're going to give you updates on that, number one. Number two, talking about the Intercontinental video, the really harrowing video that many of us have seen back when it was leaked in May of 2024. And now, of course, jurors saw it time and again. This is a question mark. How was Diddy found not guilty in terms of sex trafficking with Cassandra Ventura when we have that video? To which I say, I don't know exactly what the jurors were thinking. I don't know what's on their mind, and we're working to hear from some jurors. I hope to one day have them on my show Scandal, or perhaps Jesse on Sidebar with you, so we can really have a sense of what they were talking about in the deliberation room. But as far as the Intercontinental video, yes, it does show domestic violence. We've heard that from Diddy's team. We heard it from Tony Yaragos in the openings. We heard it from Diddy himself when he came forward with that video, you know, in which he kind of held up his phone. He had a lot of headroom and he apologized for it. So he straight up admitted it. Yes, it was domestic violence. However, domestic violence and sex trafficking are two completely different things. The government said that this showed retaliation. Cassie was leading a freak off, and then that's what happened, that he physically assaulted her because she wanted to leave. And I guess the jurors just didn't believe that argument, and that's why they found Diddy not guilty on that particular charge.
So we have more. Thank you so much for that, Sierra. We want to go back to Sheree. I have a couple of questions here for you. So first of all, Tracy Roberts, super chat question. This is just a supporter. Thank you so much. That's so kind. Cleveland Thomas asked a super chat question. And I think it's really interesting. From the testimony, Cassie sometimes paid the escorts. Could she have gotten convicted on the Mann Act as well? And I'll answer that. But this is an interesting part. Are the escorts the ultimate victims? Now, from a legal point of view, this was about Jane and Cassie being the alleged victims. The escorts not necessarily for the purposes of these charges. Having said that, through the course of this, when you think about what was alleged, when you think about what was put forward in this case by the prosecution, do you feel, Sheree, do you feel that you are a victim in any of this?
The only part of it I would make me feel victimized, and if this was confirmed, is if my participation did come under a space where Miss Ventura was under duress, where I just unknowingly did not know that she was being forced in some way, and really giving me a really transparent, acting job of, hey, I'm fine with all of this, but deep down inside, it was a scenario where she was being abused and in pure true distress with my interaction. If I unknowingly was put in that scenario to take advantage of a woman unknowingly, and that is outwardly confirmed in my specific participation, then I would feel like a victim.
I understand. I'm curious if the other people that were part of these sexual events would feel the same. Ben, go to you. You think Sean Combs is going to be released? Do you think today the judge is going to say, hey, listen, the game's changed. Whatever factors were working for the prosecution months ago, the game's changed. He should be released. What do you think?
I have an instinct that he won't be. I don't think so.
Tyler?
I think he should be released. I think that, bonds are all about what could reasonably ensure that the defendant's not going to flee. And here the max penalty is 10 years per charge. More than likely, the judge is not going to impose a max, and they're not going to run consecutively. So I think a reasonable bond of $1 million would ensure that he's going to come back and do his sentence. And the fact of the matter is the government has brought a heavy case against Mr. Combs. Most of those charges have been dismissed now because he's been found not guilty. The remaining two, the question that should be asked is, would he have received a bond if these were the only two charges he was accused of at the time he was indicted? And I think the answer is yes, he would have. It would probably been high, and Mr. Combs could put up a high bond in this case.
Ben, Papa Sear asks, thank you so much for the super chat question, Papa Sear. Do you think the $20 million alleged settlement with him, still paying $10,000 a month in rent for another victim, do you think that swayed the jury? We are in a recession. So basically, right, the settlement that Cassie had with Sean Combs, the idea that Jane was still getting her rent being paid for, I think her lawyer was still being paid by Sean Combs. Do you think that that affected the jury's decision?
It's a great question, and I think it could have. I think any number of factors, could have entered into the decision. So it's a good question, and I think absolutely it could have affected some of the jurors.
This is, wow, okay. This is from Sean Love Combs. Okay, this is the account Sean Love Combs. Tyler, super chat question. Thank you, Mr. Combs. Is it possible that if Diddy is released, he will be able to leave America, or would he be able to retrieve his items, the baby oil, the Astroglide? So multiple questions there, Tyler.
Yeah, I think Mr. Combs could afford to buy some more baby oil and Astroglide. There's no way he's going to leave the country. That would be a clear violation of any terms of bond. I'm pretty sure he's already had surrendered his passport. No commercial airline would, TSA would not allow him to get on a flight. It's clear that he would not pass the security clearance for it. So no way unless he tried to sneak out the country somehow. And that would be pretty insane for Mr. Combs to do that, knowing his ties here, his family here, the asset he has here, and a relatively low chance of him going to jail for a very long time.
Ben, this super chat question from JAM. Thank you so much. May more clinical expert testimony be used in future sexual assault and RICO trials? Trauma and coercion cause prolonged fear. Young witnesses won't come forward now.
Yeah, I think it will continue to be used. I don't think it was particularly effective here. So I think it's a matter of how good the expert is and how effectively she portrays her information.
Ben Chu, Tyler Bailey, Sheree Hayes, thank you all so much for coming on. Really appreciate you taking the time. We are going to continue our coverage here in the sense that Sierra Gillespie is outside the federal courthouse. If there is an update, if there is a significant update in what is going to happen with Sean Combs today, if he is going to be granted release, we will cover it. She will jump on air, talk about what's happening. If we see Sean Combs leave that courthouse, we will cover it. Thank you so much for the terrific, terrific questions. Appreciate all of you. Stay with us here on Law and Crime. We'll see what happens next in what is a very eventful day in the Sean Combs criminal case.
All right, we are covering the Sean Diddy Combs. Let's jump on over to some more tea on Sean Diddy. What do y'all think? Do y'all think he will get bail? Drop that down in the chat. Let me know what y'all think. This is y'all one-stop shop for all live updates on everything hot and piping, all of the tea.
Legally, but I thought that RICO charge is hard to prove. So why would the prosecution even go there?
You know, it's always an interesting thing. The prosecution and the statement just issued by the attorney for Cassie Ventura. And when you think about the civil side of this, Cassie Ventura was paid 10 years.
Kimberly Richardson joining us, Eyewitness News. Kimberly Richardson joining us with more information. Kimberly.
Yes, and speaking of whether Sean Combs walks out of this courtroom today in the next couple of hours, the judge just did say he will decide whether Combs gets released today. He said the decision may take some time, including giving the lawyers time to write letters arguing for and against his release, but it will happen some.
So right now, all we're waiting on is for the judge to receive the letters back from the family, friends, and everyone like that, right? For Diddy on release of him from custody to await sentencing. Who do you think will write testimonies for Sean? Do you think it'll be his mother, his children? Because nobody, and I mean nobody, buddy, showed up for Sean Puffy Diddy Combs, love, whatever you want to call him these days. You can call him now a convicted two-time felon of transpo of a hoe. Okay, so that's all we're waiting. Let's continue to sip this tea. As you come in, remember to drop your teacups down in the chat, like and subscribe. And welcome to being a tea sipper on Tanisha Talks Teas channel.
Time today, prosecutors asked for, quote, a few hours. The government says it plans to, quote, look for significant incarceration for Combs. Remember, he's been in since he was arrested. He did not. He tried several times to apply for bail. Those packages were shot down. He turned down a plea deal. So he's been at MDC over in Brooklyn for several months now. Whether he walks out of this courtroom this morning, if he does sometime today, that will be a scene. As we all know, Sean Combs is not shy. He is a showman. Members of the public still adore him. Many of them are here today. So when he walks out of this courtroom, that will be a moment in this whole saga. Along with him, who's been here every day, just a few family members, his 3 sons, his 3 daughters, his mom, other relatives, they will be behind him, no doubt, claiming victory and showing that. So we shall see. It will be a very interesting moment if and when today, if Sean Combs walks out of this courthouse. Back to you guys.
Just to wrap up exactly what you said into tight sentences, the judge has just said that it is possible that he will make a decision today, that Sean Combs, who has been in prison since September, may walk through those doors today?
I know, right? Yes, the judge again saying he wants to give the lawyers some time to write letters and to argue for and against his release. But yes, prosecutors asked for a few hours to do that.
We're going to go to you in a second, but again, lawyers have until 1 o'clock to file those letters releasing Combs. This is new information just into our newsroom as we speak. When the judge mentioned Combs not wanting to go to MDC, Combs, they said, vigorously shook his head and made prayer hands at the judge. The judge then told Combs that you're going to have to cool your heels in the courthouse for a while. Again, 1 o'clock, lawyers have to file their letters as to why he should and should not be released. And when you hear that, 1 o'clock, is that enough time? I mean, it seems like several hours.
This is a standard argument, and you either have the aggravating factors that the prosecution is going to be looking for, or you don't. Here is where this judge has cut it down the middle, and he is fair. Regardless of Sean Combs' celebrity status or not, the judge is going to go according to the letter of the law. And I do not see the aggravating factors that are going to require him to keep him imprisoned at this time.
It's interesting you say that, because his defense attorney did plead to the judge for the release, arguing to prosecutors, saying that prosecutors are overplaying the allegations. That's the exact term that they use. Overplaying. He is going to have his life back, is what his attorney said. He treasures the opportunity he has been given. So those are the exact words from his defense attorneys. So you agree with the attorney?
I agree. I think that this has been overreaching from the beginning as far as the RICO. In my opinion, they didn't meet the legal standard for RICO, and I think that's what the jury told them. And that's the purpose of a jury. A purpose of a jury is to find the truth within the evidence that is presented. And so when we look at this and we look at what his criminal history is, like I said, I don't see the aggravating factors. Initially, typically, it's going to be a minor. something egregious, something that shocks the conscience, whether it's some sort of force or there was aggression. None of that is present under the charges he was found guilty of. So it's going to be very hard for the judge to say, we're just going to keep you. Also, we have to remember that it was also based on the reason he was granted no bail was based on the idea that he was a threat to society and to the witnesses. The jury has found no witness tampering. So as right now, the judge really has to do a balancing act.
We want to remind everyone before we go ask Mike what's going on upstairs that Darla Miles has been in the courtroom, was there for the moment. We're waiting Darla to get outside, and then we'll get a fresh perspective on what actually went down and how it went down. She saw it all in the courtroom. But Mike, you're upstairs in the newsroom?
Yeah, what a fascinating front row seat she has to what just played out in court. We're hearing what just happened is court was adjourned as we wait for this 1 o'clock deadline for the attorneys to present their arguments on whether or not Sean Combs should be released. But at that point, Mr. Combs, again, Sean Diddy Combs, got down in the middle of a courtroom on his all huddling and hugging. And then that was to a massive round of applause, cheering in the gallery. Marshals then escorted Sean Combs out of the courtroom to another massive round of applause. You mentioned Darla Miles has been inside studying the jury's faces, giving great indication on what it was like to be inside. And I can only imagine, as she describes, the moments that we just talked about and what has transpired here this morning, guys.
All right, Mike, thank you so much for that, especially when you learn those details from what's happening inside the courtroom. We do want to get to Phil Tate live for us outside of the courtroom. Phil, you know, so not guilty on 3 of 5 counts, the most serious counts here, but could possibly still serve jail time. We don't know how long it'll be, maybe up to 20 years, maybe less. What does Diddy's legacy, you think, means to New York City? We're talking about a man who has received the key to the city from Harlem, grew up in Westchester, a New York guy here, and he has been found guilty, but there was so much detail, Phil, in this case that was leaked out. I mean, not leaked, but, you know, we know about. So what do you take of his legacy here in the city?
Yeah, well, Pedro, let's just start off by saying that Sean Combs is New York City born and bred. There are several people, thousands of people who have much support behind Sean Combs. Moments ago, we actually just saw a man hold up a Sean Combs shirt. That was a very, very popular brand. We saw Sean Combs, he took over the world of fashion. We're talking about wines and spirits. We're talking about the world of entertainment. He had popular shows from Making the Band to The Four, looking for the next generation of young artists, those who were just trying to do half, if not more, of what he was able to do in his career. We even saw him take on several roles, even as an actor. Raisin in the Sun, that was another popular film that he has been in. But of course, when things come down like this, and as you all have been saying, this has definitely been a fall from grace, especially from someone who has been a staple here in New York. We also saw him get behind several educational endeavors. He had made that pledge to even Howard University that was then returned back to him. He also had that charter school up in Harlem. That was another moment of celebration for him, that he hadn't just had a celebrity, but was also using his celebrity and philanthropic efforts as well, and looking really to help those coming up behind him as well. We also saw him use his legacy, being able to help his family, even his sons, as they would want to get into the music industry and as well as the entertainment industry. But one thing that I can tell you is that outside of the courtroom, as we've been standing out here, many people have been cheering. As I shared with you moments ago, there was even that gentleman that had that Sean Combs t-shirt up, and that really was just a clear indication that this was just one of the several industries that Sean Combs had taken over. But as we know, over the past year, his life has taken a complete twist, and much of what has been built has unfortunately fallen. Guys?
Thank you. Complicated life, complicated legacy as we move forward, certainly. But as you said, New York City born and bred. We're looking at a live picture of the courthouse waiting to see Sean Combs' family leave. So, and a lot of other people. There may be news conferences. There will be news conferences with attorneys speaking on both sides.
Yeah, we'll go right to that. I do want to ask Shauna really quickly, because he was talking about the legacy of Sean Combs. And when we were on here yesterday on set talking, we spoke about this. His defense decided not to call him up to the stand and not call for witnesses. And they said, this is not a guy, you know, who's an angel. He has his issues, but what he did was not a crime.
Correct, because just having bad character or having bad habits or an alternate sexual lifestyle is not a crime. And that is what the jury came back and determined that is not criminal. And what he was doing under those charges was not criminal. And so I think, is anything going to be the same? No. But people will know now that those things are not criminal. criminal, and it is what it is.
So he's already been detained for 9 months. Could that
Correct.
be time served?
That is going to be counted as time served. Absolutely.
We have Mike Marza in the newsroom right now. You have a statement from, I believe it's Cassie Ventura's representation.
And Pedro, when you think about it, this all got started because of Cassie Ventura filing that lawsuit against Sean Combs that triggered the avalanche of accusations. And the attorney for Ms. Ventura just issued a statement, and I'll read just a little bit. She echoes that, saying this entire criminal process started when our client, Cassie Ventura, had the courage to file her civil complaint in November of 2023. This case proved that change is long overdue, and we will continue to fight on behalf of survivors. To paraphrase the statement just issued by the attorney for Cassie Ventura. And when you think about the civil side of this, Cassie Ventura was paid a settlement of $20 million, $10 million from that Intercontinental Hotel in that horrific beating that was captured on video in 2016 that became an integral part of this case. And was talked about a lot, played a lot in the court. And it was Cassie Ventura, prosecutors alleging, escaping one of these freak-off sessions. And it was the violence that they pointed to. And now you have Cassie Ventura echoing the statements that we heard so often in the Me Too movement. And Shauna, you and I were talking about this on a different program yesterday, and it was interesting as this court was playing out, as the trial was playing out, that Cassie Ventura and Jane and another woman named Mia all had their own attorneys, just giving you an indication of just how complex and layered all of these accusations were. But that $20 million settlement did become part of the testimony. And defense attorneys argued to have a portion of that reread to the jury, ultimately failed in that attempt. But this is a huge part of this, because none of this likely would have happened had it not been for Cassie Ventura's civil suit, right?
Absolutely. This got started, and the federal prosecutors determined the charge after that lawsuit came out. This is what it was based on. Yeah. And so the civil standard is not as high as the criminal standard. And that's what we have to remember, is that it's only a preponderance when you talk about the civil burden of proof. But when you talk about life and liberty, it is beyond a reasonable doubt. And so that's the difference we have here.
The most famous case you go back to, I think of, is O.J. Simpson.
Absolutely.
Exactly right.
That's the biggest case you think of.
Yes.
So, and there is a lot more court time in this. Like today, we're not going to say this is done and we're finished, because we may make that sentencing by 1 o'clock this afternoon, but there's likely,
or at least it can be released.
Right.
Right.
There may be an appeal to this decision.
Correct.
Right. And
absolutely.
then we have those additional lawsuits, the civil lawsuits to come. So even though this may kind of, we may have a decision on these counts, this isn't the end of the court drama.
No, it is not. It's not the end of the court drama, but what this is the closing of the trial. And the verdict, and once we have that, is really the end of the trial and what's going to happen. From here on out, we're looking at consequences. We're looking at the sentencing, and we're looking at all these additional civil suits that have been filed.
Got it.
And we are standing by waiting for Darla Miles, who just exited the courthouse, and we'll get to her in just a second.
Pedro, one more thing I should just mention in the context of everything that we're watching unfold today. If you remember, if you've been in New York for quite some time, you remember Sean Diddy Combs faced a shooting charge, a gun charge, and it was a trial that happened back in 2001 for a 1999 club shooting that injured 3 people.
Right.
He was ultimately acquitted in 2001, but it was a high-profile case, and so you have him more than 20 years later back in a courtroom, hearing what happened, acquitted on some of these charges, but convicted on 2.
Yeah, we all remember that that court case from what, 2001, I believe it was, around there. Shauna, so when you hear the 20 years, up to 20 years in prison, we're standing by and we're looking at that number. It sounds like a big number, but I want to reiterate, even with that past that Sean Combs had, being in courtrooms before, that does not play a factor in the decision making of today.
No, because he has to have a criminal history that are convictions. If I remember correctly, that was an acquittal. It's not just charges.
Yep.
So if he has not been convicted of any other crimes, he has no violent history under the law as charged, and he also does not have any aggravating factors that the judge can find, then this is going to go towards the lower end. I mean, I don't expect to see more than 3 to 5 years under either given charge, to be very honest, because that's not what this charge or his background calls for.
So let's get to Darla Miles right now. She just exited the courtroom. You've been in there all morning long. You watched everything play out over the past couple of months. Tell us, what was that moment like when that verdict was given out?
Below, as more people rush towards the
A lot to unpack here, Pedro. First of all, when we found out there was a verdict, obviously there's that 20-minute window where there's lots of tension. So you saw all of the attorneys file in. Every single attorney for Sean Combs could not sit down. They were standing in the well with their arms folded. Mark Agnifilo was pacing back and forth. The family returned to the courtroom. Sean Combs returned to the courtroom. He said a few words to his family saying it's going to be okay, it's going to be okay. Now, this is after he led a moment of prayer earlier this morning when they were in court. So now the jury is seated in the courtroom. Sean Combs, actually, let me just go back because when we were waiting for the verdict to come in, Sean Combs was sitting in his chair reading Psalms 18. It was a printout of Psalms 18. So again, he had that moment of quiet, that moment of meditation. He was still waiting to find out. Obviously, there were four verdicts reached yesterday and then the other one this morning. So the jury is seated. They say they have found a verdict. And so as they were reading down the count, again, Sean Combs was not looking forward. He was kind of in that state, that stillness, that meditative state that we've seen him. And the first count, not guilty, he goes, yeah. That was the first thing. You could hear a little bit of cheering from the family and the crowd. People were saying yes. The second count, he just kind of fist pumped. Now, the third count, the sex trafficking, the Mann Act, the interstate prostitution, when that guilty verdict was read, he was kind of holding his head like this. And you could see he was shocked. He did not see that one coming. You could see kind of like that kinetic shock run through his body. But then when they went through the next count, the sex trafficking for Jane, not guilty. Then the prostitution for Jane, he and Tinny Garagos, they kind of had like a moment. They were sitting next to each other. They grabbed hands. They were holding hands, kind of like, like this, pumping each other's fists, like congratulations. All of the attorneys, all of his defense attorneys who were pacing around, nervous before the verdict was read. You could see smiles on the face of Brian Steele, smiles on the face of Mark Agnifilo. Then Combs began to turn around and speak to his family and saying, I'm coming home, it's going to be okay. And then he actually started thanking the jury. He started nodding his head, thanking the jury, that same eye contact that we'd seen at the beginning of the trial, that he'd been
Thanks for watching. Remember to show your support by liking, subscribing, and sharing. It's a blessing. Keep your teacups filled and ready for my next upload. Until then, stay inspired and remember, always stay dipping.